Hey everyone, my name's Jeff. I'm the head of marketing at A2X, e-commerce accounting automation software for the world's leading Shopify, Amazon, eBay, Etsy, and Walmart sellers, as well as their accounting partners. And speaking of accounting partners, I'm joined today by Lonnie Bloom, partner at Withum. For those that don't know Withum, they offer a full audit and compliance stack for e-commerce businesses, including tax and advisory services and financial audits. And I'm going to emphasize financial audits because that's the topic that we're going to be diving in today. We have a ton of great context and information around this topic, including an audit preparedness checklist that the Withum team has put together and that Lonnie is going to walk us through, so that if you are in preparation for an audit, please keep watching. This is going to be an amazing resource. So Lonnie, I just want to say thank you so much for joining us. I hope I did my Withum description justice, but if not, you mind providing a little bit more context in terms of who you are and what Withum is all about?
Yeah, sure. Thanks, Jeff. Appreciate you having me on. So Lonnie Bloom here, audit partner. Been at Withum for about 14 years. Withum's a top 20 accounting firm in the U.S. With servicing 15 plus different industries. I sit in our technology emerging growth vertical, and I co-lead our e-commerce sector, which is within our technology vertical. So from an e-commerce perspective, think VC, PE-backed startups from really early stage through growth, even IPO readiness in public companies as well. We help those e-commerce brands build scalable finance operations and prepare for investor-grade audits. So, anything from audited financial statements to corporate tax, sales tax, individual founder tax, and then going into advisory, we do everything from ERP implementation to cybersecurity and insurance, et cetera. So kind of think of us as a one-stop shop for all of your CPA needs as you're growing, as you're scaling, and kind of looking through, to get to a final stage, a mature stage, an exit strategy, et cetera. So, looking forward to jumping into audit readiness.
Awesome. And I'm especially excited to talk about audit readiness today because, A2X, we talk about how it helps you deliver accurate accounting and how that helps with tax and financial visibility. And we know that it also helps with audit readiness, but it's a topic that we haven't really dived into in context. So it's going to be great to pick your brain and your expertise on this, given the fact that you guys are quite clearly, pros in this particular area. That said, I do want to make mention, a little bit of a disclaimer before we dive into today's topic. This video contains general information only. So if you are preparing for an audit, please make sure to consult with a qualified professional. Lonnie and the Withum team, as an example, we'll have their link in the description below if you want to get in touch with them. All right, Lonnie, so let's start from the top. What does audit readiness mean for an e-commerce business? And more importantly, what type of e-commerce businesses need to care about audit readiness?
Yeah, it's a good question. So when I think of audit readiness, I think about proactive preparation for financial scrutiny. What that means is when you're an early stage e-commerce brand and you're looking to raise capital, you're looking to get acquired, or you have some sort of regulator, you have financial scrutiny from those third parties. So getting ready for your audit means cleaning up your books, making sure you have accounting policies documented, making sure you have systems in place that are scalable, internal controls that are sound. And it's really not just about compliance, it's about building sort of that trust and transparency into your financial environment. Types of businesses that care about this, if you're an e-commerce brand that is raising capital. So it really depends on how capitalized you are. You could bootstrap a company and never need an audit, although I wouldn't recommend it. I think it's important to have that financial visibility. But if you're raising capital from VC, PE, et cetera, or you have lenders, a bank that's interested in your financials, or you have a strategic exit that you're planning, whether it's an IPO or more of a strategic acquisition, you should care about financial compliance and sort of building that trust, building the transparency, and getting ready for an audit.
Which is a good segue to my next question, because I'd imagine that most of the people who are watching this video likely have an audit on the horizon. So we'll get into kind of like audit preparedness. And I think, Lonnie, you've also prepared a great checklist that we're going to go over. But before we dive into that, I just have one question. Like, how long does an audit usually take, especially for those people who are getting into their first one?
Yeah, it's a good question. And yeah, I don't think anyone's going out and looking at audit videos for fun. So yeah, so whoever's listening is probably gearing up for one. An audit could take anywhere, the fastest audit I've seen, it gets done in 10 days because we're working 24/7 around the clock, and everyone's motivated for a certain reason. But a typical audit, first year audit, I would say 8 to 10 weeks is a typical timeline for a first year audit. And that's if all the information is available, reconciliations are done, people are available to respond to audit inquiries. If you don't have those right resources, that first time audit could take 10 months, right? So it really depends.
That's a great point and a wonderful segue into how to actually get ready for an audit to kind of shorten that timeline as much as possible. I know that you produced an awesome checklist, so I'd love for us to go through it if that's okay with you.
Yeah, sure. So this audit readiness checklist was developed for e-commerce finance teams. So when we think about a business a growing business, we think about it in different stages. Stage one, just foundational setup. So I'll start there. This is an early growth e-commerce company, just implemented their first ERP, are in a good accounting software. The first step to me is getting a chart of accounts that is properly mapped to your financial statements, making sure have an idea of what your financial statements will look like. You have reconciliations in place. You're reconciling your bank statements, monthly, credit cards, payment processors, etc. Your key accounting policies. You're documenting revenue recognition for one. Are you compliant with ASC 606? If you're under GAAP, do you have leases? ASC 842. Are you properly accounting for those? So making sure you have the right folks in place to understand the accounting rules and get your books in order. Organizing documentation. So when you go through the first time audit, your auditors are going to request contracts, invoices, cash receipts, etc. Making sure you know where those are stored. To me, everything's digital nowadays, so making sure you have a secure place to store all of those. When I started auditing, we would go into a client's office and actually look through file cabinets and look at papers, and that day is no longer today's day and age. So making sure everything's secure. If you have inventory, if you're an inventory-based e-commerce business, you have either owned and operated warehouse, or you're working with the 3PL. Establishing that relationship, having visibility into that warehouse and doing cycle counts is something that's important for an e-commerce business. So that's stage one. And then from a team perspective, I always say when you're getting ready for an audit, make sure you have the right team members to kind of man that process. So having a controller, having whether it's outsourced accountant or senior accountant on staff, designating someone that will be that liaison between the auditors, but also a liaison between your 3PL, making sure you have visibility into kind of all your different processes. Because when you get to that first year audit and you get a checklist of 100 items your auditors want to see, someone's got to supply that and spend time to do that. So making sure you have the right resources. Stage two, when you're scaling, this is, when we typically see first audit requirement, you're scaling business, you might have a Series A investor that, really wants to look under the hood and get a sense of those financial statements, or you took out some debt, your lender, your bank wants to look at financial statements. The milestones here, we kind of list out a few, but automation, I think, is important when you're thinking about order to cash from a revenue reconciliation perspective. We do cash proofs when we look at revenue recognition, making sure you have integrations between your Shopify store, Stripe, Amazon, etc. Investing in software, investing in tools that will help reduce those manual reconciliations and just improve efficiency. From an operations
A2X
perspective,
plug.
Yeah. Oh, go ahead. So this is where A2X will fit in perfectly, because if you're going to invest in tools and software and third parties, A2X, that's exactly where you would fit in, is that operational maturity stage. And that'll help auditors feel more comfortable with the book. So I totally agree that A2X will certainly help the audit process there. From an operations perspective, you think you want to know how much cash you have, how much liquidity you have to make that next investment. Implementing a rolling 13-week cash flow, so you have that visibility weekly into cash flows, and you're able to make decisions from a liquidity perspective. Inventory is a big part of it too. Inventory management, right? Performing reconciliations from your 3PL to your books, making sure your inventory valuation is accurate. This is where we see a lot of the big issues on a first-year audit, where you have a 3PL, you have your QuickBooks or NetSuite, your accounting software, and they're not really speaking to each other. So when we go and do an account, we look at the inventory, it doesn't reconcile to the books, and we're running around trying to figure out, where are the issues. So having clear inventory management, reconciliation at the SKU level, having policies around that's going to be important. And then internal controls. We have to gain an understanding of your internal controls on your key processes, whether it's a cash receipts process, payroll, cash disbursements, making sure you have the right workflows there and segregation of duties. So from a team evolution, this is where we say, okay, make sure you have an FP&A function. From an operational perspective, your founders, your team management wants to know what the future looks like for forecasting. Make sure you're doing inventory counts at your 3PLs. Oftentimes we get to a 3PL and it's the first time that our client has been there in a while, and there's a lot of issues, right? So making sure you have someone that's kind of managing that process. Variance reporting, budget to actuals, making sure you're kind of looking at that in real time to flag discrepancies, to catch issues as they come. And then just one of the issues we see is when we look at contracts and we review them for revenue recognition from an accounting perspective, it's written by the sales team. The marketing team has a big eye on it, but the accounting team is usually the last to hear about it. And then they write a contract in a way that it might create accounting issues. So making sure there's just alignment between different departments, I think, is important. So that's kind of stage 2, operational maturity, but we could kind of go on to stage 3. This is audit and exit readiness. This is a mature company, whether it's a Series A, Series B. You've grown tremendously from a revenue perspective. You're getting a lot of traction and market visibility. This is another time where we see first time coming for an audit. I'll go back and say being proactive about audited financials, about your financial statements if you're going out to raise capital. This is where you don't want to get to a stage where you're gearing up for an exit and it's imminent. It's 6 months from now. There you have buyers, waiting to look at your financials, and it's the first time you're engaging an auditor. 6 months for that turnaround is very doable, but you have to get the right resources. You have to make sure you have all the stuff, your controls in place and things like that. So this is where we want to make sure you're preparing your GAAP compliant financial statements. You're conducting internal readiness assessments, making sure you have a financial reporting package that's shareable pretty easily. It's not something you have to build for the first time. From an operations perspective, you have dashboards where you see real-time data. You can make decisions in real time. You're compliant from a sales tax perspective. That's a big issue we see in diligence. Are you sales tax compliant? Are you using third-party experts to understand where there's potential exposure? That's an area where there's a big focus, especially if you have a product that you're selling online and you're selling in all 50 states, so across the country, across the globe. There could be issues there. Inventory management, having an integrated system with your ERP. So having a management system that connects with your ERP. There's reconciliation tools out there. There's softwares to assist with this, but that's another area we like to spend time on. And then things that you might not think about to the very end is your inventory subject to obsolescence? Do you have to establish a reserve for obsolete, damaged, slow-moving inventory? It's an estimate. It's something that management should take a look at and understand what kind of products do you have, what is your SKU mix, and are there slow-moving SKUs that you probably won't sell at cost even, So are you recognizing those at the lower of cost or net realizable value? Those are the questions your auditor is going to be asking you. And then being proactive, getting a sense of what an audit request list is going to look like and how long is that going to take. It's going to be important. Team perspective is just more strengthening that internal controls, strengthening the IT general controls. We ask questions about change management and different softwares, who has access, things like that. And then making sure you have that key hire, whether it's a controller, it could be outsourced at this point, but at this point, I think when you're more mature, you kind of developed an in-house accounting finance team, but having that audit liaison is going to be important. So I'll go to stage 4. Stage 4, a lot of our clients are coming to us. They're a mature company now. They're growing, and now they're talking about a strategic exit, whether it's an IPO or a strategic acquisition. And depending on which route you intend to go, that kind of changes how we would look at you guys from an audit perspective. But it really just focuses on getting your financial statements investor grade ready. Establishing timelines, making sure you have a clean cap table, understanding of the cap table, what's on there from a legal and tax perspective, centralizing your finance function, continuous controls, especially if you're going into the public eye, if you're going to IPO. There's a higher level of scrutiny when you get to that level. And then from a team perspective, you already have an auditor engaged. You've been doing it for a couple of years. You have strategic advisors, bankers, if you're looking for an exit, and then you have a CFO or sort of someone elevated to that sort of finance role. But yeah, that's a typical kind of life cycle of an e-commerce business that we see. We work with stage 1 all the way through stage 4 and beyond. So I hope that's helpful. I think it's interesting to kind of talk through that life cycle because whoever's listening, whether you're in stage 1 or stage 4, I'm sure, if you're in stage 4, I hope you're getting your audit done already. But if you're in stage 1, start thinking about it. I think it's important.
I think a resource like this is especially helpful because most of the businesses, regardless of what stage they fall into, are doing a large part of what you've outlined in the checklist. But we talk to tons of e-commerce businesses as well as outsourced accounting firms. They're not necessarily doing all of it, right? Because not all of it is necessarily relevant when they're not preparing for an audit. But given that this gives the full picture, it could really help you identify where you're at, what you have in place, and what you need to get in place to prepare. So I'm excited that you've just gone through this checklist. We will have the checklist in a link in the description below for you to get access to it. And then if you have any questions about it, you can obviously reach out to Lonnie and the Withum team. So that was awesome from an audit preparedness perspective. I do have a question. I want to double click on the A2X piece for just 2 seconds. How does better transaction level automation, like what A2X provides, and you talked about kind of that, automate what you can piece, change the scope, timing, or cost of an audit from your perspective?
Yeah, absolutely. Automation is very important, and you guys kind of fit into that, like that stage 2, stage 1. You're ramping up. You're looking into automation tools. You're looking into reconciliation tools. That's exactly where you guys fit in. We have sort of really transactional level data, and it's a really manual effort to get that data into something that is audit ready or ready to go to your management committee, your board, your CEO and founder. You want real-time data. You want those real-time insights so that management can make operational decisions quickly. Far too often we go into a client that doesn't really invest in automation, doesn't invest in technology, and they're living out of spreadsheets. And there's one person, their controller, that owns that spreadsheet and is the only person that really knows how to make it work. Then that controller leaves, right? And then they have to hire someone and teach them how to do all these manual reconciliations. There's a lag. There's a 2-month lag where things fall apart, right? And there's no one there to sort of run the ship. And from an accounting perspective, there's a lot of holes. So if you look at if you have that 2-month window where no one was running the ship, and that's where we see a lot of issues, and that leads to slower audits because too many holes. It leads to higher costs because now we're spending our time helping you try and reconcile an inventory report or a revenue schedule, deferred revenue schedule. So I think the investment in automation, the investment in sort of third-party advisors to get you audit ready, like A2X, right? You guys are sitting in a perfect position to help these companies get to a point where you could go through an audit and it could actually stick to the timeline that you planned, because you're not going to find a lot of issues. The reconciliations are going to be clean. It's going to be easier for us to do a flex analysis and to audit inventory and deferred revenue and all the main groups, the financial statement accounts, because you made that investment early.
Yeah, and that's an area that you just talked about, kind of like the controller with kind of the spreadsheet, and a lot of people transition from that to us. And one of the pieces that they particularly like isn't just on the automation and on the time saving side, it's also on the accuracy side. Given that A2X is the most accurate solution on the market, like, Lonnie, I have a question for you, not to put you in a corner, but like, and this could be a quick fire answer. Gut reaction when a client comes in to do an audit, like, from your perspective, how do you feel when they are already using A2X versus not? Like, what's your reaction?
Yeah, I've done it enough times where if I go into an audit prospect and they send me a trial balance financial statements, and they tell me, kind of who they're using for their advisors, their softwares, et cetera. And if they say we're not really using anyone, it's kind of, we're keeping it in-house. We haven't really thought about policies before, or reconciliations or automation. I know that 8-week or 6 to 8 week timeline that we're hoping for, I know it's going to drag out. And we've seen that so many times where, it's just going to take forever. If they say, oh, we're working with A2X, we have reconciliations, we have clear audit-ready reporting packages, my job just got so much easier. And then I could actually deliver, a more transparent story around the audit, because I know what's coming. I know there's going to be clear reconciliations and clear work papers that I can audit. So it makes our lives a lot easier. So yeah, we appreciate it when we see you guys in the mix.
I love that. So I'm not going to put words in your mouth, but it sounds like you're saying that not using A2X would be a mistake, which is a good segue into my next question, which fairly cheap joke.
Yeah.
What are the top mistakes that you would say e-commerce businesses make that it's extend audit timelines or increase audit fees? Now, you could obviously skip past the A2X component, but yeah, would love to hear the most common mistakes that you run into.
Well, obviously, it's not using A2X, right? That's the number one mistake.
Yeah.
We talked about a few things, right? We talked about inventory, right? Not collaborating with your 3PL properly, not having the right reconciliations or visibility into your inventory management system and how it's connected to your ERP. I think for an e-commerce business, that's one of the biggest issues we face. Sales tax compliance, and then corporate tax compliance. Are you actually filing where you're supposed to? Have you done an assessment? If you've done a light assessment, you might be missing something, right? Getting the right folks there to assist with that comes up in diligence a lot. Sales tax, revenue recognition. Do you have a revenue recognition policy, and are you reconciling revenue accurately? That is another area where we come into a lot of issues. And then, again, the manual reconciliations lead to more prone to error. Introducing automation, and then controls, making sure you have controls in place. We work with small accounting teams that might not necessarily have the right folks to implement sophisticated controls, but at least you have to have some sort of controls to get us more comfortable with an audit process.
Love it. All right. Thanks for that, Lonnie. I appreciate it. And I guess like the last question that I have is, if a client is not audit ready, but they know that one is coming down the pipe because they have, one of the objectives that you've identified earlier in the conversation, what services does Withum offer to get them up and running relatively quickly?
Yeah. So if you know one is coming and you haven't really thought about it, you haven't talked to any CPAs and gotten quotes or anything like that, talk to us for 30 minutes. We can look at your financials. We can give you a sense of what that timeline would look like, what the cost would look like. We can do it at a very high level. or more kind of granular approach. But what we can do to help gear up a company for an audit, we can do a pre-audit readiness assessment. We look at your where I would focus is your policies, your major policies, revenue recognition, lease accounting, cap software, and then look at your cap table from inception through today. Have you issued safe notes? Have you issued warrants, stock options? There's complexities around a cap table that have accounting impact that you may not even be thinking of or have not recorded on your financial statements, which any auditor is going to look at that and ask day one, hey, have you thought about evaluation around your warrants?
Right.
And you may not be thinking about that. So kind of a pre-audit readiness checklist we could go through together. We could help with your monthly books from from that perspective as well. Inventory, sales tax, consulting, we could kind of talk through what that would look like. And then just, again, looking at all of your accounting policies and getting you ready for an audit, I think is where we would live.
Love that. Hey, Lonnie, I just want to thank you again so much for sharing your expertise and experience here with us today. We will have links in the description below for the checklist, as well as information on how to get in touch with Lonnie and the Withum team. Thank you so much for watching today's video, and we'll see you soon.
Awesome. Thanks, Jeff. Thanks for having me.